Hey guys, this is David. This is day 11 of crypto, PegNet, and DeFi talks that I'm doing. I've covered a lot of topics around crypto, why crypto is honest money. I've talked a lot about the economics and governance of PegNet. And so I wanted to do a talk now on DeFi and fundamentally why DeFi is winning and is going to win over most of the world's users in the next 10 years, 15 years in the long term. And it effectively boils down to the fact that as a decentralized protocol, it has no barrier or profit margin to defend. So people often ask me, how is PegNet going to be profitable with a tenth of a penny as a fee? It doesn't need to be profitable. It's not a company. It's a decentralized application. The tenth of the fee, if it isn't even paid to anybody, it's used as burning as an anti-spam mechanism on the Factom protocol. That tenth of a penny is going to buy an entry credit. It doesn't need to maintain a profit margin. Effectively, the users own the network. And this is the macro trend. User-owned networks fundamentally can outcompete any company that they go head-to-head with. Company needs to produce 10, 20, 30%. Some tech companies maintain a 40% profit margin. A lot of SaaS companies have a 80% margin on their service. So they create a software and make it available to people, and they charge a lot more than it costs to run that software. And to be fair, they had lots of people to pay to do the research and produce the software and then release it. But it does sort of get inflated over time. Software and products cost more than they need to because there's businesses and middlemen between those producing the product and those consuming the product. In a user-owned network, there's no barrier. There's no middleman. The software is doing what the middleman used to do, whether that's transfer value in the case of Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Dash or other protocols, whether that's holding value in a commodity or something else in the case of PegNet, whether that's running a smart contract in the case of Ethereum. All of these used to be functions that you would pay an intermediary for. And as decentralized protocols have gotten more and more mature, they're doing more and more. My crypto shirt of the day is storage, which apparently is now integrated with IPFS. And that's a good example. Decentralized storage, decentralized value transfer, decentralized internet provision. Step by step, we're getting together all the blocks that you need to provide ever more complicated services directly to people with no middleman involved. And so how does a company compete? How does a remittance service stay in business when they're charging people, say, $5 to send $50? That's a 10% fee to send money from one place in the world to another. I can do that on my phone now with Bitcoin Cash for a tenth of a penny. Using something like Cointext, I can send it directly to somebody's phone number. They don't even have to install a crypto app. And so as these barriers fall, and as the technology gets even easier to use, we're going to see it encroach more and more on traditional corporate functions. And this is why I put forth everything that can be decentralized will be decentralized as Johnston's law in 2014, because that's what I believe is we're in this process of replacing all of the world's old functions with decentralized functions. And it's going to take a while to get there. The world is very complex, but we can do this. And DeFi is an incredible manifestation of this trend. Decentralized finance at its core is very simple. People have capital. They want to get a return. There are different ways to do that, whether it's staking in a protocol and doing the work of that protocol and getting a reward, or borrowing and lending functions. And now that we have smart contracts that can handle most of those traditional custody and matching type functions, all of a sudden you're seeing this huge proliferation of DeFi apps that are providing people a return on their capital for these different functions. And some of them are holding ETH, and some of them are holding stable coins. And there's different ways that you can fund these, but more than $1 billion are already put into DeFi contracts. And I believe that's just going to increase exponentially. If you look at the options, people don't have a lot of great options today. Treasuries aren't paying much. Banks aren't paying much. The stock market is down, and maybe down for a while. And so this is probably the most attractive option in the world. And it's available because you've removed all the cost and overhead of a traditional provider and replaced it with one of these decentralized DeFi platforms. So that's a very hard trend to fight. People say, oh, DeFi is in its infancy, it's early on. What about problems and bugs? All of that will happen, but every time that DeFi runs into a barrier, what I've seen from the community is that people come up with a solution very quickly. Oh, centralized oracles were a point of failure. We need to move to decentralized oracles. Here's PegNet. Here's mining-based, consensus-based value secured by decentralized oracles. This solution is available right now. Okay, great. Now these apps can switch to these type of solutions. Is collateral an issue? Okay, well, there are other alternatives, right? So every time DeFi runs into a challenge, I believe that this community of people is creative and talented enough to come up with solutions. And you can kind of think of it as there's a giant bounty on coming up with solutions. A lot of people hold value in Ethereum, for example, and making Ethereum valuable is, think of it as a $16 billion bounty for finding the next use case that fuels the demand and usage of Ethereum. And that's part of what has made their community so dynamic is, effectively anybody can participate in, claiming part of that bounty by holding value there and then making the protocol more valuable through use cases. So, DeFi, I think, is just the latest and greatest manifestation of this, but it's a trend I think could grow for the next 3 to 5 years at least, as it picks up more and more of this low-hanging fruit when it comes to giving people a return on their capital. And it removes important systematic risks. Let's remove custodians. There's all this overhead around regulating custodians. If you remove all the custodians, you don't need those regulations. Let people hold their own value. Now that's possible. Let people transfer their own value without intermediaries. That's now possible. So the more of those functions that we can make available directly to people, the faster this whole industry is going to grow. So I'm enormously bullish on this sector and this use case because I think it really just gets back to basics. Is people want to be able to offer capital and use capital. And the market will come up with a fair price for that. I don't know what that fair price is. Maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 7%, maybe it's 10%. Probably depends on any number of factors about how risky the type of borrowing and lending is, or the maturity of the protocol that they're doing the staking for. But there's just so many ways to use this technology to give people access to these user-owned systems. Imagine in 1999, if you could have owned a piece of one of the internet protocols without creating any friction, without being it private or for profit, but if you could own one of the protocols, HTTP or TCP/IP, that all the data and all the value of the internet flowed over. That would be enormously compelling. And I think we're at that same point again, where we're building these fundamental protocols that are going to move trillions of dollars of wealth in the coming years, and people have an opportunity to participate directly in that value creation and that value movement. So, just all of that to say, get involved in DeFi, understand the applications that are being built, not just PegNet, but Compound and many others that are building these applications. Try them out. Open a wallet, do some staking, experiment with it. It is still early, but that's when you want to learn about something. The greatest returns are when there's the highest friction in the process. By the time everything has been smoothed out, the markets will have come to that equilibrium that eventually it'll get to. So, check out the applications, really understand this space. But I think this is clearly on a trajectory that's going to replace traditional finance. Does anybody think we'll be going to physical banks in 10 years or 5 years or next month? I mean, it's been a while since I went in person to a bank. And so, I think that'll be increasingly true for more and more of the people in the world now that we all have all those functions in our hands. So, good to talk with you guys today, as always. Thanks for being on this journey. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Give me more suggestions for topics that I should cover. And wash your hands, be kind to one another, and see you guys tomorrow. Take care.